Alan Menken, it's been quite some time since Beauty and the Beast premiered, and back in the early 90s, and you're back with the live action revival of that Disney classic. What was the first thing that came to mind when you got the call that you would be composing for this new film?
Well, I was thrilled that we were going to make a live action film of Beauty. I just didn't know, after doing the initial animated and then doing the Broadway show, what more could we do with this story? And so there were years of kind of development before Bill Condon came aboard. But it was when Bill came aboard that things really became clearer to me that we were going to be, giving much more of a sense of period, much more of a sense of backstory to Belle and her father, and also backstory to the Beast, and a sense of realism.
Yeah, and you, I guess there would have been a lot of challenges because you did contribute 4 new songs to the film with collaborating with Tim Rice. Evermore, If I Dare, How Does a Moment Last Forever, and Days in the Sun. Did you have a favorite out of that? Everyone seems to have a favorite. Like my kids love Days in the Sun. It's the only one that wasn't submitted for Oscar consideration, weirdly. But did you have a favorite out of those?
Well, I actually love Days in the Sun. It was actually the first one written. I think one reason we didn't submit it was because it goes from character to character to character, and it is, it doesn't have the same kind of sustained narrative as some of the others. I think maybe my favorite is How Does a Moment Last Forever. I love the music box quality of that and the way it occurs a number of times through the movie.
Yeah.
But Evermore was amazing to write, and that was probably the hardest one to get right. Just because in the Broadway show we had a song, "If I Can't Love Her," which happens at the end of Act 1, where the Beast has driven Belle away out of anger, and Bill loved that song, but he said, "I think in the movie we should have the moment where he's let her go out of love as opposed to driving her away out of anger," and that's a whole other moment. So it really required a new song.
And were there any other particular primary challenges in reviving and adapting what has now become, obviously a really iconic score for a new audience? Because we all are so familiar with it. But was your brief to bring something really new, or to just kind of perfect what you had already done? Like, what was the brief for that?
Well, I wanted to make sure that everything felt fresh. So, for instance, we went to the archives and found lost Howard Ashman lyrics for Gaston, and at the end of the movie for Beauty and the Beast. Those are all Howard lyrics, and so with each song I wanted to give them a fresh arrangement and a fresh performance that would help people both remember what they heard before, but feel like they were seeing it for the first time also. So that was a lot of the challenge. And the film was shot in London, so simply saying, in contact with what was going on with the music team there was essential on a regular basis. And I had a great team, so they made it, pretty easy.
And was this your first time working with Bill Condon?
It is.
Yeah. What were you expecting from this collaboration? He's got such a great name for this genre. And what was the highlight of working with him?
Well, I asked people before I met Bill. I wanted to know what he was like, and one of the main things I heard was Bill loves musical theater. Besides being a filmmaker, he loves musicals. I mean, like a freak. He knows details about musicals that I don't know. So that was great to know. And I first met him actually down at Kennedy Center, where he was directing a stage production of a musical there. And what I was struck by was what a menschy kind of guy. It's Yiddish, but he's a real good guy, and down to earth and really smart. He's very detail oriented. I mean, exceptionally, to like it's an and or an or in the lyric, or where a note lands, or I mean, literally every single beat of this movie is something that Bill, thought about and had notes about. And normally you would think that could be kind of a pain in the neck. And with Bill, it never was, because he's just so smart and so likable and so enthusiastic. So to me, it was a great experience with him.
A lot of people, when they talk to you, I can imagine, want to talk about awards because you have such an impressive awards history, and they want to bring up the EGOT. It's the first thing that came to mind when I was given this assignment. And
Right.
I just wonder, do you ever get tired of talking about the EGOT, and what can you possibly do next on television so you can net that Emmy?
Well, I do have an honorary Emmy for what it's worth.
There you go.
An honorary Emmy for a song that Howard Ashman and I wrote way back. It was a request by Roy Disney. It was an anti-drug song called "A Million Wild and Wonderful Ways to Say No." It didn't really occur to me. The EGOT was never particularly on my, it really didn't register for me as a big deal, but people around me would mention it. So yeah, I guess it's a little tiring. People around you keep mentioning it. I mean, I've had a couple of great shots at it. 2 seasons of Gallivant.
Yeah.
And also a song from the Neighbors. And at this point, I just kind of think if it's going to happen, it'll happen. And if it's not going to happen, it's certainly fine.
So be it. But speaking of your awards history, you netted 8 Oscars in pretty short succession for The Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin and Pocahontas. And they've become like so entrenched in our popular culture. For many of us, we grew up with them. But just speaking about, we'll go to that in a sec, but just talking about the awards, Little Mermaid was kind of relatively early in your career. Can you recall what that first win for, I can't remember if it was for the song or for the score, the first Oscar, what was that? Yeah.
The very first for the score, and it was like an out-of-body experience, as you can imagine. It's hard to reconcile going from, being off-Broadway theater writers to sitting on the aisle and knowing that you're the person who's predicted to win. We had been there years before with a Little Shop movie and Mean Green Mother from Outer Space, and we were sitting all the way in the middle of the aisle where it would have taken a week to get up to the stage. And I remember Levi Stubbs of the Four Tops was our Audrey Two Voice, and sang the song, and it brought the house down. And I thought to myself, "Whoa, maybe we'll win." I'm reaching in my pocket where I had a couple words scribbled that I might say, and I see Howard just sort of grabs my hand and goes, "You can relax. You're not winning anything tonight." But with Mermaid, it was it was extraordinary. It was we were swept up in a phenomenon that's bigger than us. We were young. It was slightly terrifying. As I remember, I think it was Steve Martin who gave the award, and I still remember going up there, getting the award, going off stage, being in the elevator with Steve, and kind of reminding him that he had been our dentist in Little Shop of Horrors, but we hadn't met before. I think maybe we'd met once before. But everything about that moment is magnified. It's like in slow motion.
All right. Because you had 8 wins in short succession, I can always remember one of them in particular is when you won, and you dedicated it to, or you tributed it to the late Howard Ashman. Can you take us back to that time and the emotion of that win, or those 2 wins for Beauty, with Howard no longer being around to kind of see the end result?
Yeah. Well, first of all, should put it in context. When we won from Little Mermaid, it was that night, literally at the governor's ball, when Howard broached the topic of, that he needed to tell me that he was sick. And now looking at that in context, you know, it was such a hard night for him because he was physically weak. When we won for Beauty, his partner Bill was allowed to come and accept the award on his behalf, which was extraordinary. Everything about Beauty and the Beast was made incredibly more emotional because of Howard's passing, because it happened 6 months before the movie was released. And it was like at the end of the movie, there's the dedication to Howard, and it's impossible to watch the movie without, you know, getting verklempt. And it was an extraordinary time because all these projects, Newsies was also in among those projects. So there was 4 films happening practically simultaneously, plus you know, theatrical projects that were still going on, and it was just a crazy, crazy time in my life. So it's very emotional and also surreal. You know, we were nominated for, we had 3 songs nominated for Best Song and 1 for Beauty and the Beast, which was extraordinary right there. And you know, there was so many things happening in succession that were, you know, life-changing. I'm sure it's what some, you know, what Benj, you know, Benj Pasek and Justin Paul are going through right now. Who I, you know, by the way, collaborated with me on the song for Aladdin, the Aladdin movie, or what Lin-Manuel Miranda's going through now, or Bobby Lopez. It's an incredible time for somebody when you're a composer and you're used to being behind the scenes, and then something happens and all of a sudden you're standing on that stage. It's amazing.
Yeah, I reckon it probably would be. And I recall back in the day that those categories almost pretty much became the Alan Menken Awards. So you just kind of seem to have a lock on them, and for good reason. And so those scores have now, you know, become part of pop culture, and they're all on stage in various cities throughout the world. And I remember taking my kids to see Aladdin, for example, and it bringing back so many visceral memories of what that score means to me. What about you? When you see the live action or the stage versions of your work, what emotions does it elicit from you?
I think mainly gratitude. Just the sense that these have become part of the national, you know, the fabric of our society. And so I think it's kind of akin to, you know, having children and watching them grow up. In a way, these projects are really independent of me now. And the songs, you know, the longer they're around, the more they belong to other people in a way. Other people invest in them as their own. And that's just an amazing phenomenon. And then there's the new songs. And of course, I invested in them like I did in the songs back then. Wanted to know how people like them. How did they work? Did they, you know, what did they mean to people? And I think a lot of people may feel like, you know, after all the awards and after all of the experiences, that maybe it doesn't mean as much at this point in our careers. But it never gets old. When you write a new song and you're introducing something new into the world, it's a whole other experience. So, you know, with all of those, you know, with Mermaid or Beauty or Aladdin or Newsies or Pocahontas or Hunchback, whatever, I always, you know, part of me always goes back to that moment when I first wrote those songs.
Yeah. I was also thinking, given that if you look at IMDb, we can see what's coming up, what's slated for you in the next few years. Is there anything that you can say? Obviously, you can't give us anything that's going to spoil it, but are you excited about the work that you're going to be doing on the new live-action Disney films that are coming up in the next few years?
Oh, I am, totally. I'm excited. First of all, I'm excited about Aladdin, which we're in the midst of working on right now. We have a song, one song in particular that I'm very excited to have people hear. It's extremely timely, and I wish I could hear it today, but we have to. For Aladdin, you know, I'm going to be collaborating for the first time with Lin-Manuel Miranda, who I've known to actually since he was a kid. and I've watched, with great wonder and pride, watching how he's at this extraordinary career. And it'll be great to get in the room and see what we write together. That's on Little Mermaid. There's also a number of other projects that have been discussed and out there. There's people talking about another Little Shop adaptation for film, a sequel to Enchanted. So there's a lot going on, and a lot also is a mystery to me. Especially live action films are really a director's medium, and so what it's eventually going to be is very much in the director's hands. Aladdin is very much in Guy Ritchie's hands. We don't know who's directing Mermaid yet, so that's a huge decision.
Yeah, absolutely. With musicals being so much in fashion these days, I'm asking this question from my colleague Amanda Spears. Do you have a favorite kind of modern musical or favorite song from a movie that you didn't write, and why? Why is it your favorite? Anything that comes to mind?
Modern song for a movie.
Yeah.
I remember when we had Enchanted, we had 3 songs up nominated, and there was this little song from Once, Falling Slowly, that I thought was a beautiful song. I also sometimes think if we hadn't been nominated for 3 songs, maybe Enchanted would have won.
Yeah.
But I thought that was a beautiful song, and it became a very lovely Broadway show. The work that's done at Disney, whether it's work for Moana or for Frozen, that's great work. It's a tradition that really continues, and I want to think other original musicals. There haven't been a lot of live action original musicals lately, but those are the ones that come to mind.
Well, I hope that we get to see you back at the Oscars this year. I have a hunch Evermore is going to be there, but it could be How Does a Moment Last Forever? It could be If I Dare. And if they are, maybe we can then go back to naming the award, the Alan Menken Award. Thank you very, very much for your time, Alan. It's much appreciated.
Great to talk to you.